The Starship Sentinel moved slowly toward the massive ring-shaped station that floated in the darkness of space. And Captain Daniel Shaw stood at the viewing window watching the structure grow larger with each passing moment. He had spent 15 years preparing for this day, and now humanity was about to meet the galactic community for the first time. The station was enormous, bigger than any city on Earth, and lights glowed from thousands of windows where alien beings lived and worked. "Captain, we are receiving docking instructions," said the communications officer. And Daniel nodded without taking his eyes off the station. Maria Santos, the chief xenobiologist, stood beside him with her tablet in hand, and her fingers moved quickly across the screen as she reviewed everything they knew about the Galactic Concord. 47 species, she said quietly. And we are about to become the 48th. The docking process took nearly an hour, and when the airlock finally opened, Daniel led his team into a wide corridor where a delegation was waiting for them. The alien in front was tall and thin, with a body like an insect and large eyes that seemed to look in multiple directions at once. And it stepped forward with movements that reminded Daniel of a nervous deer. "Welcome to the Galactic Concord," the creature said through a translation device hung around its neck. "I am Ambassador Zithril, and I have been assigned to guide your species through the introduction process." Daniel extended his hand in greeting, and he noticed how Zithril flinched slightly before accepting the gesture. "Thank you for receiving us," Daniel said with a warm smile. Humanity has dreamed of this moment for generations. Something strange happened when Daniel smiled, and several members of the alien delegation took small steps backward, their bodies tensing as if preparing to run. Maria noticed this reaction immediately, and she made a quiet note on her tablet. The tour of the station took several hours, and everywhere they went, Daniel observed the same pattern of behavior from the aliens they encountered. Species of all shapes and sizes would stop and stare at the humans, and their body language always showed the same thing. Fearsome had fur and walked on 4 legs. Others had scales and moved like snakes, and a few floated through the air on gas-filled sacks. But all of them watched the humans with wide eyes and tense muscles. "Ambassador Zithril," Maria said during a quiet moment, "I have noticed that many species here have eyes on the sides of their heads rather than the front. Is there a reason for this common trait?" Zithril paused before answering, and Daniel could see the alien choosing words carefully. "It is simply how evolution worked on our worlds," Zithril said. "Side-facing eyes allow for better awareness of surroundings." Maria nodded but said nothing more, though Daniel could see she was thinking deeply about something that evening. The humans were given quarters in a section of the station reserved for new species, and Maria called a private meeting with Daniel and Kevin Wright, the security chief. "I have been studying the database they gave us access to," Maria said, "and I have found something remarkable." She pulled up images on the room's display screen, showing the evolutionary history of various Concord species. Every single species in this alliance evolved from prey animals, she explained. Herbivores, filter feeders, creatures that survived by running and hiding rather than hunting. Kevin leaned forward with interest, his sharp eyes studying the images. "No predators at all?" he asked. "None," Maria confirmed. "Not a single species that hunted other animals for food. And this explains everything we have seen today." Daniel understood immediately what she meant. "Their fear of us," he said slowly. "It is not cultural or political. It is biological," Maria finished. "Their ancestors survived by fearing creatures like us. Creatures with forward-facing eyes designed to track prey, teeth meant for tearing meat, bodies built for chasing and catching." Kevin touched his own face thoughtfully. "We look like monsters to them," he said. "We look like the thing that ate their great-great-grandparents." Maria corrected his soft chime, announced a visitor. and Daniel opened the door to find Ambassador Zithril standing in the corridor. Looking even more nervous than before, "May I enter?" the ambassador asked. "There are things I wish to discuss privately." Daniel stepped aside to let Zithril in, and the alien moved into the room with quick, careful steps. "I must be honest with you," Zithril said once the door was closed. "Many members of the council are deeply frightened by your species. We have noticed." Daniel admits Zithril's multiple eyes blinked in a pattern that might have been surprise. "You are very direct," the ambassador said. "Most species spend years learning to read such social signals. We are predators," Maria said gently. "Reading body language was how our ancestors found food." Zithril shuddered slightly at her words, but continued speaking. "The council will officially welcome humanity tomorrow. But I wanted you to understand the situation. Your every movement, every expression, every sound triggers ancient fear responses in us. Even your smile," Zithril added, looking at Daniel. "When you showed your teeth earlier." 3 delegates nearly fled the room. Daniel touched his mouth with sudden understanding. "I was trying to appear friendly," he said. "I know this now," Zithril replied. "But to us, bare teeth have only ever meant one thing." Kevin spoke up from his corner of the room. "If every species here is prey, how have you survived?" he asked. "The universe must have other predators out there." Zithril went very still, and the room fell silent. "That is a question the council does not like to answer," the ambassador said finally. Maria and Daniel exchanged glances, both sensing there was something important being left unsaid. "Ambassador," Daniel said carefully, "if we are going to be part of this community, we need to understand its history. All of it." Zithril seemed to struggle with some internal conflict. And finally the alien spoke again in a voice barely above a whisper. "There was another predator species once," Zithril admitted. "They found us 3,000 years ago, and they did not come in peace." "What happened to them?" Maria asked. "The Concord does not speak of the Rathaki," Zithril said. "But their shadow still hangs over everything we do. And some believe they were never truly destroyed." The ambassador moved toward the door. "Rest tonight," Zithril said. "Tomorrow you will meet the council. And perhaps then you will understand why some fear you, while others see you as the answer to prayers we have whispered for centuries." The door closed behind the ambassador, leaving the 3 humans alone with their thoughts. Daniel walked to the window and looked out at the countless lights of the station, each one representing lives and families and dreams. "A galaxy full of prey," he said quietly. "And something out there taught them to be afraid." Kevin joined him at the window, and now they have met. "U.S., the security chief said," Maria completed, the thought that hung unspoken in the air. "The question is whether we are what they feared, or what they have been waiting for." 3 days had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Concord, and Maria Santos had spent most of that time buried in the historical archives, searching for answers to questions nobody wanted to discuss. The database was massive, containing records from thousands of years of galactic history. But Maria had noticed something strange about certain sections. Entire regions of space were simply blank, marked only with symbols that translated to Forbidden Zone or Restricted Territory. And any attempt to access information about these areas was blocked. She sat alone in the research chamber, her eyes tired from hours of reading, when she finally found what she had been looking for. Hidden in an old diplomatic file was a reference to a species called Rathaki, and the file had been marked for deletion, but never actually removed from the system. Maria read quickly, her heart beating faster with each new piece of information. The Rathaki had been reptilian creatures, cold-blooded hunters who evolved on a harsh desert world where only the strongest survived. They had achieved space travel approximately 4,000 years ago. And when they discovered the peaceful herbivore civilizations of the Concord, they had seen only one thing: Food. Oh no, Maria whispered as she read accounts of the first contact between the Rithaki and the Vey and the Concord species. The predators had not come to trade or communicate. They had come to harvest. Entire planets had been raided for their populations, with billions of sentient beings taken as livestock. And the Concord had been completely unprepared to fight back. Their ships were designed for exploration and trade, not combat, and their people had no concept of organized violence. The war had lasted nearly 200 years, and the only reason the Concord survived was because they vastly outnumbered the Rethaki through desperate sacrifice and overwhelming numbers. The prey species had eventually pushed the predators back to their home territory, and a final battle had supposedly destroyed them forever. But as Maria read deeper into the files, she found troubling notes from scientists who had studied the aftermath. Complete extinction unconfirmed. One report stated, several colony ships unaccounted for. Recommend continued monitoring of forbidden zones. Maria copied the files to her personal device and hurried to find Daniel. She found him in a meeting room with Kevin Wright, reviewing security protocols for the human delegation. We have a problem, she announced as she entered. Daniel looked up at her face and immediately knew something serious had happened. What did you find? He asked. Maria explained everything she had discovered, and both men listened in silence as she described the horror of the Rithaki invasion. They treated intelligent beings like cattle, Maria said. Kept them in pens, bred them for food, and they did this for nearly 2 centuries before the Concord managed to fight back. Kevin's expression had grown dark during her explanation. And nobody thinks to mention this to the new species that just showed up? He said angrily. They are afraid, Daniel said quietly. Afraid of the memories, and perhaps afraid of what we might think. There is more, Maria continued. The record suggests some Rithaki escaped into the forbidden zones, and nobody has checked on them in over 3,000 years before anyone could respond. An alarm began blaring throughout the station, and emergency lights flashed in every corridor. Daniel grabbed a communication device from the table. This is Captain Shaw. What is happening? The response came in a panicked voice from station control. 3 colony worlds in the outer rim have gone silent. All communication lost. We are receiving a distress beacon from a ship that was sent to investigate. The humans rushed to the main command center, where dozens of aliens were moving frantically between stations. And High Arbiter Velonis stood at the center of the chaos. She was an avian creature, tall and covered in gray feathers, with a sharp beak and eyes that had seen many years of leadership. Captain Shaw, she said when she noticed the humans arrive. I did not summon you. With respect, High Arbiter, Daniel replied. If something is threatening this alliance, we need to know about it. Velonis studied him for a long moment, and Daniel held her gaze without looking away. Finally, the old bird made a sound that might have been a sigh. Play the transmission, she ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the interior of a damaged ship, and a small furry creature appeared on screen, bleeding from wounds on its face and body. They came from nowhere, the creature gasped. Ships we have never seen before. They destroyed everything. They took everyone. The camera shook as something impacted the ship. They are not like us, the survivor continued. Eyes in front, teeth like knives. They looked at us like we were nothing but meat. The transmission ended in static, and silence filled the command center. Kevin was the first to speak. The Rithaki, he said. And it was not a question. High Arbiter Velonis turned to face him, and for the first time Daniel saw true fear in her ancient eyes. We hoped we were wrong, she said. For centuries, we have detected small signs, ships at the edge of sensors, colonies that disappeared without explanation. But we convinced ourselves it was nothing. You knew they might still be out there, Maria said with disbelief. And you did nothing. What could we do? Velonis replied, her voice heavy with exhaustion. We barely survived the first war. We lost half our population, half our worlds. And we had the element of surprise then. She gestured at the screen showing the destroyed colonies. They have been growing stronger while we pretended they did not exist. And now they are coming back. Ambassador Zithril stepped forward from the crowd. This is why some of us hoped for the humans. The insectoid said, "We need predators to fight predators." Valonus turned to Daniel with an expression mixing hope and terror. "Your species hunted and killed to survive," she said. "You evolved the instincts we lack, the aggression, the ability to pursue and destroy. You want us to be your weapons," Kevin said flatly. "We want you to help us survive," Valonus corrected. Daniel looked at his two companions. Then back at the alien leader. "Show us everything you have on the Ridaki," he said. "Their tactics, their ships, their weaknesses. You will help us?" Valonus asked Daniel, thought of the terrified creature in the transmission, thought of the billions who had been taken as livestock in the First War, thought of what would happen if the Rithaki reached the populated core worlds. "Humans protect what belongs to them," he said. And as of 3 days ago, this alliance became ours too. For the first time since the alarm began, a small flicker of hope appeared in the eyes of the prey species watching him. They had found their predator. And now they could only pray they had chosen the right one. The full council chamber was filled with representatives from all 47 species. And Daniel Shaw stood at the central platform looking out at thousands of eyes that watched him with fear and desperate hope, had asked for this opportunity to address the entire Concord. And now he felt the weight of 2 civilizations pressing down on his shoulders. 3 days ago, he began, his voice carrying through the vast room. "You welcomed humanity into your alliance. And I could see the terror in your eyes when you looked at us." A murmur rippled through the crowd. And Daniel raised his hand for silence. "You were right to be afraid," he continued. "We are predators. Our ancestors survived by hunting and killing other creatures. And that history is written in our bodies." He pointed to his own face. "Our eyes face forward because we needed to track moving prey. Our teeth are designed to tear flesh, and our bodies are built to chase and catch things that run from us." The chamber had gone completely quiet, and Daniel could see some delegates gripping their seats as if preparing to flee. "But I did not come here to frighten you more," Daniel said. "I came to tell you something about human nature that you need to understand." Maria Santos stepped up beside him, and she carried a display device that projected images into the air above the platform. "Humans are what scientists call persistence predators," Maria explained. "We did not evolve to kill quickly like some hunters. Instead, we evolved to follow our prey for hours or even days until it collapsed from exhaustion." Images showed ancient humans walking across open plains, following herds of animals under a burning sun. "This type of hunting required something special," Maria continued. "It required cooperation. Our ancestors hunted in groups, sharing the work and the rewards. New images appeared showing humans working together, communicating, caring for injured members of the group. Persistence hunting also required empathy," Maria said. "We needed to understand what our prey was feeling, where it would go, what it would do. And this ability to understand other minds became our greatest strength." Daniel took over again, somewhere along the way. "Our empathy expanded beyond just hunting. We began to care about other creatures. We formed bonds with different species, protected them, loved them." He showed images of humans with dogs, cats, horses, and countless other animals. "We became the only predator in our world that would die to protect creatures weaker than ourselves," Daniel said. "And this is what makes us different from the Rithaki." High Arbiter Velonis spoke from her position in the council seats. "You say you are different," she said. "But how can we trust this? The Rithaki also had cooperation and intelligence. Yet they saw us only as food. Daniel nodded at the fair question. The Rithaki were ambush predators, he replied. They evolved to wait in hiding and strike quickly, killing before their prey knew they were there. Kevin Wright stepped forward to join his companions. That kind of hunting requires no empathy, Kevin explained. An ambush predator does not need to understand its prey. It only needs to be patient and fast. Humans are the opposite, Daniel added. We spend days inside the minds of our prey, learning their patterns, predicting their behavior, and this forced us to develop deep understanding of other creatures. He paused and looked directly at Velonis. We know what fear feels like because we had to recognize it in others. We know what exhaustion and desperation feel like because we watched our prey experience these things for days at a time. This empathy became part of who we are. Maria said, "It is why humans form bonds with almost any creature that shows even small signs of intelligence or emotion." Delegate from one of the mammalian species raised a limb to ask a question. "If this is true," the creature asked, "why do humans still fight wars among yourselves? Your history shows terrible violence between your own kind." Daniel did not try to hide from this truth. "You are right," he admitted. "Humans are capable of great cruelty. We have done terrible things to each other throughout our history." He let that statement hang in the air for a moment. "But we have also spent our entire existence fighting against our worst instincts," he continued. "We created laws and religions and philosophies, all designed to control the predator within us." Kevin spoke again. "I am a soldier," he said. "I have trained my entire life to fight and kill. But I was also trained to protect, to defend those who cannot defend themselves. And this is what separates warriors from monsters. The Rithaki hunt because they see other beings as prey," Daniel said. "Humans will hunt the Rithaki because we have chosen you as ours to protect." Ambassador Zithril stood up from the delegation seats. "What exactly are you offering?" The insectoid asked. "We will help you fight," Daniel replied. "Our military experts will train your people. Our ships will defend your worlds, and when the Rithaki come, they will find something they have never faced before." "And what is that?" Velonis asked. Daniel finally allowed himself to smile, letting his teeth show fully for the first time since arriving at the station. "Another predator," he said. Several delegates gasped and pulled back from the platform. But Daniel noticed that many others leaned forward with interest. "The Rithaki believe they are the supreme hunters of this galaxy," Kevin added. "They have never experienced what it feels like to be hunted themselves. We will teach them," Daniel promised. The vote was held immediately, and despite the fear that still flickered in many eyes, the council approved human military assistance by an overwhelming margin afterward. Ambassador Zithril approached Daniel in the corridor outside the chamber. "I noticed you did not smile during your entire speech," the ambassador observed. "Until the very end. I was trying not to frighten anyone," Daniel admitted. "And yet your final smile frightened the Rithaki sympathizers most of all," Zithril said. "I saw several delegates from border regions grow very pale." Daniel stopped walking and turned to face the ambassador. "There are Rithaki sympathizers in the council?" he asked. "There are always those who believe cooperation with predators is safer than resistance," Zithril replied. "They have been sending information to the Forbidden Zones for years. You knew about this?" "I suspected," Zithril admitted, "but I could never prove anything. Perhaps now they will reveal themselves." Daniel considered this information carefully. "When I smiled at the end," he said, "I was not trying to frighten anyone here." "I know," Zithril replied. "You were sending a message to the Rithaki, to their spies. And what message was that?" Daniel asked. Zithril made a sound that might have been a laugh. "That the prey have finally found their own predator," the ambassador said, "and the hunt is about to begin." 3 months had passed since the battle that changed the galaxy forever, and the Concord home station buzzed with activity unlike anything in its long history. News of the human victory had spread to every corner of known space, and the effect on the Rithaki Empire had been devastating. Without their belief in predator supremacy, their entire social structure had collapsed, and their conquered territories had erupted in rebellion as slave populations realized their masters could be defeated. Ships carrying refugees poured into Concord space daily, free prisoners from dozens of species who had spent generations as Rithaki livestock, and the Alliance scrambled to find homes for them all. Daniel Shaw stood in the council chamber once again, but this time, the eyes watching him held wonder instead of fear. High Arbiter Valonis rose from her seat and addressed the assembly. "Captain Shaw," she announced, "the council has voted unanimously to offer you a position as the first human member of the High Council. Your wisdom and leadership would be invaluable to our alliance." Daniel bowed his head respectfully. "I am honored by this offer," he replied, "but I must decline." Murmurs of surprise filled the chamber. "Humanity does not need a soldier representing us," Daniel explained. "We need someone who can build bridges between our species, someone who understands both predator and prey." He gestured to Maria Santos, who stood nearby. "I recommend Dr. Maria Santos for this position," Daniel said. "She was the first to understand the truth about our peoples, and she will be the best voice for cooperation." Valonis considered this for a moment, then nodded her ancient head. "The council accepts your recommendation," she said. "Dr. Santos, will you serve?" Maria stepped forward, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "I will serve," she confirmed, "and I promise to work every day to help our species understand each other better." In another part of the station, Kevin Wright was conducting a training session with mixed species security teams. Aliens who had fled from shadows their entire lives were learning to stand their ground, to work together, to face fear instead of running from it. "You will never be natural fighters," Kevin told them honestly. "Your instincts will always tell you to run, and that is not weakness. That is millions of years of evolution keeping your ancestors alive." He demonstrated a defensive stance, but instincts can be managed. He continued, "You can learn to feel the fear and choose to stay anyway, and that choice is what makes a warrior." A young insectoid raised a limb. "How do humans manage their hunting instincts?" the creature asked. "Do you not feel the urge to chase when we run?" Kevin smiled, carefully keeping his teeth hidden every single time, he admitted. "But we have spent our whole history learning to control that urge, and now we will help you learn to control yours." Deep in the detention section of the station, Daniel made his way to a special cell where Korthax was being held. The Rithaki commander sat in darkness, his massive body looking smaller somehow than it had during the battle, and he looked up when Daniel entered. "Have you come to gloat?" Korthax asked. "I came to answer your question," Daniel replied. "You asked what we are, and I do not think you understood my soldier's answer." Korthax shifted in his restraints. "He said you are predators." The alien recalled. "Yes, but that is only part of the truth," Daniel said, sitting down across from his prisoner. "Can I ask you something first?" Korthax made no response, so Daniel continued. "When your people hunted the Concord species, did you ever feel guilty? Did you ever look at your prey and feel sympathy for their fear?" "Why would we?" Korthax replied. "They were food, nothing more." Daniel nodded as if this confirmed something. "That is the difference between us," he said. "Humans have always felt sympathy for our prey. Even when we were hunting to survive, we understood their suffering." "That sounds like weakness," Korthax said. "It felt like weakness sometimes," Daniel admitted, "but it became our greatest strength because the same empathy that let us understand prey also let us form bonds with them." He leaned forward. "You asked what we are," Daniel said. "We are predators who chose to become protectors, hunters who learn to guard instead of kill. And that choice is what makes us different from you." Korthax was silent for a long moment. "Can such a choice be learned?" he finally asked, and his voice held something it had never held before. "Uncertainty. I do not know," Daniel answered honestly. "But if any of your people want to try, we will help them." He stood and walked toward the door. "Think about it," Daniel said, "because the old way is over. The galaxy will no longer tolerate predators who see others as meat, but there might be room for predators who learn a different path." Later that day, Daniel stood on the observation deck, watching the endless flow of ships arriving and departing. A new human vessel had just docked, carrying families who would be the first permanent human settlers in Concord. Space children ran through the corridors of the station, human children mixing with young aliens of a dozen species, and their laughter echoed through spaces that had known only fear for millennia. A small furry creature, one of the mammalian species, wandered away from its parents and found itself near Daniel. It looked up at him with huge round eyes. Freezing when it realized what he was, Daniel slowly knelt down to bring himself to the child's level, and he smiled gently, keeping his lips close to hide his teeth. "Hello there," he said softly. The child did not run. Instead, it took a small step closer. Curiosity overcoming ancient instinct, Maria appeared at Daniel's side, watching the interaction with wonder. "The child is not afraid," she observed. "Children learn what to fear from adults," Daniel replied, still focused on the small creature in front of him. "If this generation grows up alongside humans, they will learn something their ancestors never knew." "And what is that?" Maria asked. The child reached out with a tiny paw and touched Daniel's hand, and he let his fingers curl gently around it. "That sometimes the most dangerous thing in the forest is also the one that keeps you safe," Daniel said. More alien children gathered around, drawn by their companion's bravery, and soon Daniel was surrounded by young creatures of half a dozen species, all reaching out to touch the strange predator, who smiled without showing teeth. Maria watched with tears forming in her eyes. This was what they had come to the stars for, not to conquer or dominate, but to find new families among the endless worlds. The Pacific Galaxy had spent 3,000 years fearing the return of predators, building walls and hiding in the dark, praying for salvation. And salvation had come, not in the form of mighty weapons or powerful shields, but in the form of hunters who had learned to love what they once chased. Daniel looked up from the children and met Maria's eyes. "Think the council will let me babysit sometimes?" he asked with a grin. Maria laughed and shook her head. "The great Captain Shaw," she said, "terror of the Rithaki, defender of the Concord, and now galactic babysitter. There are worse legacies." Daniel replied. He turned back to the observation window, still surrounded by children, and watched as the galaxy stretched out before them. Somewhere out there, the remnants of the Rithaki were hiding, licking their wounds and wondering what had happened to their certainty. And somewhere closer, billions of free beings were taking their first breaths as something other than livestock. The humans had come to the stars looking for new horizons, but they had found something more important. They had found a purpose in a galaxy full of prey. Only humans were true predators, but being a true predator meant understanding the deepest truth of all: strongest hunt not for food, but for something to protect. The combined fleet hung in space at the edge of the outer territories. 200 Concord vessels, arranged in defensive formations around the single human ship at their center. Daniel Shaw stood on the bridge of the Sentinel, watching sensor readings that showed the approaching enemy. 30 Rithaki warships were coming, each one larger and more heavily armed than anything the Concord possessed. And at their head flew the massive flagship of Commander Korthax. "They are not even trying to hide," Kevin observed from his station. "They expect us to run. That is what prey does," Maria replied quietly. The communication system crackled as a transmission came through from the Rithaki fleet. A face appeared on screen that made several crew members step back involuntarily. for it looked almost like a dinosaur from Earth's ancient past. Korthax had gray scales covering his massive head, with forward-facing yellow eyes and rows of sharp teeth visible when he spoke. "Little creatures," the Rithaki commander said. "I see you have gathered your herd in one place. How thoughtful of you to make our harvest easier." Daniel stepped forward to respond. "I am Captain Daniel Shaw of the human vessel Sentinel," he said, "and I am giving you one chance to turn your ships around." Korthax made a sound like grinding rocks that seemed to be laughter. "Human," he said, tasting the word, "we have heard rumors of your kind. Another predator species from a death world." The Rithaki leaned closer to his camera. "But you are so small," Korthax continued, "and there are so few of you. Do you really think you can challenge us in our own hunting grounds? I think you have forgotten what it feels like to be prey." Daniel replied calmly. More grinding laughter came from the Rithaki commander. "We have never been prey," Korthax declared. "We are the ultimate hunters, the supreme predators. And you will learn this when we add your species to our livestock." The transmission ended, and the Rithaki fleet began advancing. "All Concord ships, engage defensive pattern," ordered the alien admiral commanding the fleet. And the allied vessels moved into position. The first wave of Rithaki ships hit the Concord lines like a hammer striking. Glass alien vessels scattered in all directions as their crews panicked, ancient instincts overriding years of training. And within minutes, the careful defensive formation had collapsed into chaos. "They are running," Kevin reported, frustration clear in his voice. Daniel watched the battle unfolding and made his decision. "All ahead full," he commanded. "Take us straight at the flagship." The Sentinel surged forward, alone against the entire Rithaki fleet, and on the enemy flagship. Korthax watched with amusement. "One ship," he said to his officers. "One tiny ship thinks it can challenge us. Perhaps they wish to surrender," suggested one of his subordinates. "No," Korthax replied, studying the approaching vessel with interest. "They are attacking, just like we would. Perhaps these humans will provide some entertainment before we eat them." The Sentinel weaved through the Rithaki formation, too small and fast for the larger ships to track effectively, and Kevin coordinated fire that disabled 3 enemy vessels before they even knew what was happening. "Prepare boarding parties," Daniel ordered. "We are going to take their flagship." The Sentinel attached itself to the hull of the Rithaka command ship like a parasite, and Kevin led 50 human soldiers through the breach they cut in the enemy armor. The corridors inside were dark and humid, designed for creatures that preferred warmth and shadow, and the humans moved through them with weapons raised and senses. Alert, they encountered their first Rithaki defenders around the 3rd corner. The aliens were enormous, nearly 3 meters tall, with thick scaled bodies and claws that could tear through metal. And they charged at the humans with roars of hungry anticipation. What happened next would become legend throughout the galaxy. The humans did not run, did not scatter, did not freeze in terror like every other species the Rithaki had ever hunted. Instead, they fought back. Kevin dropped the first attacker with 3 shots to the chest, then rolled aside as another lunged past him, and his team moved in perfect coordination, covering each other and advancing steadily. The Rithaki were stronger and larger, but they had never faced an enemy that hunted back when one human fell wounded. 2 others immediately dragged them to safety, while a third provided covering fire. And this cooperation confused the Rithaki, who expected injured prey to be abandoned. Massive Rithaki warrior cornered a human soldier and prepared to deliver a killing blow. But the human smiled at him and pulled a grenade from her belt. "I am not dying alone," she said. The explosion killed both of them, and the other Rithaki nearby stared in disbelief at what they had witnessed. Prey did not sacrifice themselves to take hunters with them. Prey did not smile when facing death. Kevin and his remaining forces pushed deeper into the ship, leaving confused and terrified Rithaki behind them. And finally, they reached the bridge. Korthax stood waiting for them, twice the size of any human present, his claws dripping with the blood of a Concord prisoner he had been questioning. Impressive, the Rithaki commander admitted. You fight almost like real predators. We are real predators, Kevin replied, raising his weapon. Then you know that predators do not surrender, Korthax said. We will fight to the death. I know, Kevin said. And then he shot Korthax in both legs. The massive alien collapsed with a scream of shock and pain, and Kevin walked forward to stand over him. But you are wrong about one thing, the human said, looking down at the fallen commander. Real predators know when they are beaten. He motioned to his team. Take him alive, Kevin ordered. I want him to see what happens next. Outside, the tide of battle had turned completely. The surviving Concord ships had watched the Sentinel attack, and something had changed in them. Some ancient terror had been broken by seeing the impossible happen. They stopped running and started fighting the Rithaki. Meanwhile, were experiencing something they had never known before. Fear their flagship had been taken, their commander captured, and these tiny humans had done what no prey species had ever managed. They had hunted the hunters, the remaining Rithaki. Ships fled into the darkness of space, and the Concord forces let them goon the captured flagship. Kevin dragged Korthax to a viewport where the alien could see his fleet retreating. Watch, Kevin said. Watch your hunters run like frightened animals. Korthax stared in silence, his yellow eyes wide with an emotion he had never felt before. What are you? He finally asked. Kevin thought about the question for a moment before answering. We are humans, he said, and we just taught your species something you forgot a long time ago. What is that? Korthax demanded. Kevin leaned close to the alien's ear. Everything is prey to something, he whispered, and now the Rithaki have met their predator.